I was born with average looks and talent. And I'm dull and uninteresting. Even my fiancé, whom I've known since childhood, despises me so much that he declared, "If you're going to get married, I must have your half-sister, who is both beautiful and talented, as a concubine." Her mother was so angry she was grinding her teeth, but she had no choice but to agree. He was about to turn around and order someone to force-feed his younger half-sister a bowl of fertility-killing soup to eliminate future trouble. I stopped my mother. "He's not a good man, and I don't plan to marry him." But her mother just kept snickering. "You won't marry? Then who do you plan to marry? Who would even want you? Marrying below her station to a man who's fallen on hard times? Go be a second wife to some old geezer in his 70s or 80s? Or should I become a nun?" I shook my head and said firmly, "I want to enter the palace and become a concubine. Given my family background, I should be able to secure a position of moderate standing. Given how much my mother loves me, this generous dowry would last me a lifetime. Most importantly, I am so ordinary that I cannot catch the emperor's eye or compete for his favor. It certainly won't get in anyone else's way. I could easily have spent the rest of my life in the harem, living a life of luxury and ease." Ancient story time, ancient channel. I hope you all enjoy my stories. Feel free to like and subscribe. I've known one thing since I was a child. I'm not the kind of girl people remember at first glance. Her appearance could be described as delicate, but that's about it. As for talent, he's well versed in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, but he's lackluster in all of them. My mother often said, "You're a good kid in every way, but you're just too ordinary." I don't think that was directed at me. How wonderful it is to be ordinary. Ordinariness means security. But some people don't see it that way. Take, for example, my fiancé, Zhao Jingheng, the eldest son of the Marquis of Jinbei, whom I was betrothed to since childhood. When he came to visit that day, I made a point of putting on a new outfit and had my maid style my hair in a fashionable updo, thinking that, since we were engaged after all, I should at least make a good impression. As soon as he saw me, he furrowed his brow so deeply you could have pinched a fly between them. "Miss Lin," he said, refusing even to sit down and standing in the center of the hall, his tone as cold as if he were discussing a business deal. "I'll be blunt. Our marriage was arranged by our elders, and I wouldn't dare disobey them. But I have one condition." He paused, glanced at me, and couldn't hide the disdain in his eyes. "If you wish to marry into this family, you must have your half-sister, who is both talented and beautiful, come along as a concubine." I was taken aback for a moment. He was referring to my half-sister, Lin Wanfu. Wanfu was indeed beautiful, with an oval face and eyes and brows as exquisite as a painting. She looked like a portrait of a beauty just standing there. She excelled in every aspect of music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. There wasn't a single young aristocrat in the capital who didn't speak highly of her. But she's my half-sister. I haven't even moved in yet, and he's already got his eye on my sister? Mom completely lost it right then and there. "What do you mean by that, young Master Zhao? My legitimate daughter is supposed to take a concubine who's the daughter of a concubine? What do you take the Lin family for?" Zhao Jingheng remained calm and composed as he clasped his hands in a bow. "Please do not be angry, Aunt. I am simply speaking the truth. I have great respect for Miss Lin's character, but if she were to be the only one to join the family in this marriage, I fear it might lead to discord between husband and wife in the future, which would not be ideal. To put it simply, your daughter is too ordinary. By marrying her, I'm already doing you a favor. If she doesn't bring a pretty younger sister along with her, I'll feel like I'm getting the short end of the stick." Her mother was so angry she was trembling all over. But in the end she didn't dare to be too definitive. The Marquis of Jinbei's household wields immense power. The Lin family cannot afford to offend them. After Zhao Jingheng left, Mother sat in the parlor, lost in thought for quite a while. Finally, gritting her teeth, she said to me, "Tanger, why don't we let that girl Wanfu go with you? I'll make sure to give her a bowl of infertility soup first, so she won't cause any trouble later on." Hearing that sent a chill down my spine. Soup that kills off offspring? Am I supposed to ruin my half-sister's life for a man who looks down on me? Although Wanfu and I aren't particularly close, she's never done anything to hurt me. Her face is something she was born with, and her talent is something she's earned through daily hard work. It's not like she stole it from me. I took a deep breath and looked at my mother. Mother, I said, I don't plan on getting married. Mom thought she had misheard him. What did you say? I'm not going to marry Zhao Jingheng after all. The mother paused for a moment, then let out a cold laugh. You're not getting married? Then who are you planning to marry? Who would even want you? Marry down to a man who's fallen on hard times? She counted on her fingers. Become the second wife of some old geezer in his 70s or 80s? Or become a nun? Her tone was both urgent and angry, and by the end, her eyes were red with tears. Tanger, do you think your mother wants you to suffer? But this world is just that cruel to women. If you don't marry Zhao Jingheng, who else can you marry? I shook my head and said, enunciating each word clearly, I want to enter the palace. Her mother's expression froze. What did you say? Enter the palace as a concubine. My mother opened her mouth but couldn't say a word for a long time. She probably thought I had gone crazy. But I'm not crazy at all. I've thought this through carefully. First of all, given the Lin family's status, I'm sure to be granted at least the title of noble lady once I enter the palace. And becoming the head of a palace will be no problem. My rank won't be too low, nor too high, as long as it's sufficient. That's all that matters. Second, given how much mother loves me, my dowry will definitely be substantial. I've made some inquiries. The dowry my maternal grandmother left mother back then included more than a dozen estates and shops, and sooner or later, all of these will be mine. Third, and most importantly, with my looks and talent, I simply wouldn't catch the emperor's eye. With 3,000 beauties in the emperor's harem, every type imaginable, from plump to slender, how could he possibly notice a plain, unremarkable concubine like me? I don't compete for attention. I don't want to climb the ladder, and I don't get in anyone's way. I could live a peaceful life in the harem, enjoying a life of luxury and fine food for the rest of my days. Once the emperor passes away, I'll be the imperial dowager, and the new emperor will have to show me some respect. If I'm lucky enough to become a veteran of 3 reigns, no, a grand consort of 3 reigns, then I'd be treated like a living legend in the palace, who wouldn't treat me with the utmost respect. Isn't this better than marrying into the Marquis of Jinbei's household and having to kowtow to others? After hearing my analysis, Mother was silent for a long time. Finally, she sighed. Are you sure? Sure. Once you enter the palace, you'll never be able to leave. I know. If you ever get bullied, even Mom won't be able to help you. I wouldn't go looking for trouble. Who would go out of their way to pick on someone who poses no threat? Mother stared at me for a long time, then suddenly smiled, and as she smiled, tears began to fall. You, my child, you've never been one to fight or compete since you were little, and your mother has always been afraid you'd get the short end of the stick. Well, look at you now, you've found the path that's least likely to leave you at a disadvantage. She wiped away her tears and patted my hand. All right, Mom will go get you some. And just like that, I entered the palace. On the day I entered the palace, I went in through a side gate and followed the eunuch who was showing me the way. We passed through countless palace gates, and I was finally assigned to a side hall next to Shoan Palace. The Shoan Palace is home to Empress Dowager Qi, a veteran court lady who served the late emperor for many years. She has no children and has never been involved in disputes over the succession. She is highly respected within the palace. Most importantly, she is my mother's aunt, so I have to call her great aunt. On my first day after settling in, I brought a gift to visit her. The Empress Dowager Qi resided in the main hall of Shoan Palace. The room was furnished in a simple, elegant style, and on the table stood a small bronze incense burner from which a wisp of smoke rose. She sat on the divan. Her hair was already gray, but her eyes were still bright. She was clearly a shrewd woman. She looked me up and down, and her brow furrowed. That's nonsense. Just as I was about to pay my respects, she cut me off with a single sentence. What was your mother thinking? Exactly? Sending you to the palace like this? Shouldn't she have found you a good family and married you off early? Instead, she sent you to this remote palace to let you waste your youth and spend your life in solitude? That's really blunt. But I know she's doing it for my own good. I smiled, stepped forward to bow to her, then sat down below her and explained the whole story. After hearing this, the Empress Dowager Chi stared at me in utter astonishment. So you entered the palace with the intention of becoming a nun? I guess so. I nodded honestly. The Empress Dowager Chi was so amused by my words that she laughed, then reached out and tapped my forehead. You little girl, you really do think of everything. And your mother, too, she spoils you so much. Living as a widow in the palace isn't exactly a walk in the park. Do you really think life in the inner palace is all that great? I know it's been tough, but I also know that life outside isn't necessarily any better. Of all those noble women who married into wealthy and influential families, how many of them truly lived a comfortable life? During the honeymoon phase, a wife might enjoy a few days of favor, but once the novelty wears off, some husbands take concubines, while others keep mistresses. Those who are lucky enough to have a son still have something to look forward to. For those without sons who were not favored, it was common to be bullied by their concubines. For those who fared even worse, even their dowries were taken away, and they had nowhere to even cry. What's the difference between those days and living as a widow while your husband is still alive? I might as well go live in the palace. At least the palace rules are strict, so no one dares to openly steal my things. I shared my thoughts with Empress Dowager Chi, and after listening, she alternated between sighing and smiling. You little girl, you sure have a whole arsenal of twisted logic. Great aunt, this isn't some twisted logic, it's a matter of survival. The Empress Dowager Chi looked at me, her gaze gradually softening, and finally she waved her hand. Never mind. Never mind. Since you're here, you might as well stay with me. If you ever need anything in the future, don't hesitate to come find me. That's exactly what I was waiting to hear. Ever since then, I've been visiting Grand Consort Chi every day. On the surface, I was there to chat with my elders and keep them company, but in reality, I was there to gather information. The first rule of survival in the palace is to figure out who's allied with whom, and who's at odds with whom. Through my connection with Grand Consort Chi, I've gotten to know quite a few people. Most of the consorts were elderly and had little to do in their daily lives. They either played mahjong or admired flowers and sipped tea, leading lives that were utterly boring. To them, my arrival was like a breath of fresh air, because I not only play mahjong with them, but I also tell them stories. It's not exactly a serious story, just those storybooks I brought back from the palace. Whether it's the Peony Pavilion the story of the Western Chamber, or any of those popular novels about talented scholars and beautiful women, I can recite them all vividly from memory. The Grand Duchesses were completely captivated by what they heard and looked forward to my visits every day. Empress Dowager Chi would sometimes tease me, saying, "Well, you're something else. You didn't come to the palace to serve the emperor, but to serve us old women." I thought to myself, serving you is much safer than serving the emperor. And so the days went by, one after another. At first, the concubines in the harem were a bit curious about me, and they'd come by in small groups to find out more. But the moment they saw me in person, their expressions were priceless. Some of them let out a sigh of relief. With a face like that, he posed no threat to them. Some looked down on her, wondering how anyone would dare send someone like her to the palace. There are also those who smile warmly and genuinely want to be friends with me, probably because they figure that if they're friends with me, they don't have to worry about me stealing their men. I gratefully accepted them all. Whether it's hostility or goodwill, my goal isn't to vie for favor, it's to stay alive. Before long, everyone in the harem had forgotten all about me. After all, who would pay any attention to a noble lady who spends every day at the Grand Duchess's palace, never showing up at court or stealing the spotlight at banquets? Even the Empress herself said, "Honorable Lady Xing, you have worked hard serving the Grand Consorts. You need not come to pay your respects in the future." I was so happy I almost bowed down to her right then and there. Not having to get up early to pay my respects means I can sleep in until I wake up naturally. Not having to deal with the intrigues among the concubines means I can sit in my own side hall, drinking tea and basking in the sun. Every day, I'd pop over to the dowager's palace to grab a free meal, chat with them, and play some cards, and just like that, the day would fly by. I figured that in a few years, when the imperial consorts are even older and I'm getting on in years myself, I'll get to know those elderly consorts who have fallen out of favor, and we'll all get together to spend our twilight years. It really is the perfect path to a comfortable retirement. But I never expected that fate would have other plans for me. That day, I went over to Grand Lady Chi's place to scrounge a free lunch, and as soon as I walked in, I sensed that something was off. The Empress Dowager Chi sat on the couch with a plate of pastries in front of her, but she hadn't touched a single one. Two elderly maids stood beside her, their expressions equally peculiar. "Great aunt, what's wrong?" The Empress Dowager of Chi glanced at me and sighed. "Tanger, the Empress Dowager has sent someone over." "Who is it?" "The sixth princess." I was taken aback. The sixth princess? I have a vague recollection of this princess. She is the daughter of Consort Shin and is about 7 or 8 years old this year. A few days ago, a major scandal broke out in the harem. It was said that Consort Shin actually used her own daughter to set a trap in order to frame Lady In. I bribed a palace maid with some silver, and only then did she explain the whole story to me in detail. And Dang had just given birth to a prince, and Consort Shin was green with envy. She wanted to snatch the prince away and raise him herself, but she had no legitimate grounds to do so. So she hatched a diabolical plan. She scalded her own daughter's face with scalding tea, then framed Indongi, claiming that Indongi, out of jealousy over Consort Shin's favor, had harmed the princess. The Empress Dowager and the Emperor were furious, and In found himself unable to defend himself. But to everyone's surprise, the sixth princess publicly identified her own biological mother in front of everyone. Word for word, crystal clear, Her Majesty scalded herself. She told me not to say anything. She said that as long as I did as I was told, she'd let me play with Ndang's little brother in the future. As soon as those words were spoken, the entire palace was thrown into a state of shock. Consort Shin collapsed on the spot and was subsequently banished to the coal palace. And what about the sixth princess? Her face was disfigured, and she was branded as someone who had stabbed her own mother in the back, becoming a figure everyone in the palace went out of their way to avoid. The Empress Dowager found the scar on her face unsightly, but because she was a princess, she couldn't simply ignore it. So an imperial edict was issued, ordering that she be sent to the Grand Princess Dowager to be raised. Then, the Empress Dowager Chi passed her off to me. "Great aunt, why me? I want to cry, but I have no tears. I don't know how to raise a child." Empress Dowager Chi rolled her eyes. "What's the point of raising a child like that? Just give her something to eat, as long as she doesn't starve to death. That's enough." The Empress Dowager doesn't want to see her. His Majesty doesn't want to see her. And the Empress doesn't want to see her. Which of the concubines in the entire palace would be willing to take on this hot potato? "You're just sitting around anyway, so just keep an eye on her. Just make sure she doesn't come near us and get in our way." "I see. It's a hot potato, nobody wants it. And in the end, it landed in my lap. But what can I do? I had no choice but to bite the bullet and take it on." The first time I met the sixth princess, I almost didn't recognize her as a princess. She huddled in a corner of the side hall, wearing a worn-out, faded dress, her hair a tangled mess, and her face covered by a veil that was neither quite old nor quite new. Hearing footsteps, she looked up. Her eyes were astonishingly large, pitch black, and filled with wariness and indifference. "Who are you?" Her voice was hoarse, probably from crying so much. I crouched down, trying to look as kind as possible. "I am noble Lady Sheng. You may call me Lady Sheng. Starting today, you'll be living with me." She stared at me for quite a while. The corner of her mouth beneath the veil seemed to twitch slightly, as if she were smiling, yet it also seemed like a sneer. "You don't want me either, do you?" Her question was so direct that I didn't know how to respond at first. She continued, "It's fine. I don't want you guys anyway. Just give me something to eat and don't bother me. Me? That little girl, her words are even harsher than an adult's. I sighed, stood up, and said, "All right, let's eat first." I had a palace maid go to the imperial kitchen to fetch some food, 4 dishes and a soup, with both meat and vegetarian options. It wasn't exactly a lavish spread, but it wasn't meager either. The 6th princess held her bowl, took a couple of bites, and looked up at me. "Why are you staring at me? I'm worried you won't be able to eat it." "I can eat," she said quietly after taking 2 more bites. When I was in the cold palace, I could only eat 1 meal a day. I was lucky not to starve to death. My heart sank, and I didn't say another word. In the days that followed, I really got to see what it means to be a troublemaker. The 6th princess, her name is Yuehua, is nothing but a stinky, hard rock. I picked out some new clothes for her, but she said she wouldn't wear them and tossed them aside. I prepared a room for her that faced the rising sun, but she said it wasn't necessary and insisted on sleeping on a small cot in the side hall. I had someone make her a scar-removing ointment, but she wouldn't even look at it. I tried to talk to her, but she either ignored me or snapped back at me with a single sentence. "Stop pretending to be a good person in front of me." Do you think I'm ungrateful, too? I'll tell you this. I don't regret it. If she dares to burn me, I'll dare to expose her. Once, I couldn't help but ask her, "Do you hate your mother?" She was silent for a long time, then said, "She's my own mother, but she wants to ruin me. Why shouldn't I hate him?" That look in his eyes was so cold, it didn't seem like it could come from a 7-year-old. I was speechless. Since then, I haven't gone out of my way to please her anymore. I've done everything I can to prepare, whether she wants it or not. I've done my best. Anyway, as long as I can make sure nothing happens to her and she doesn't go and tattle on me to the Empress Dowager and the Empress, I'll be relieved. But just a few days later, something happened to her. In the middle of the night, a palace maid came rushing to my door and knocked, saying that the 6th princess had fallen unconscious from a high fever. I jumped out of bed in a panic and ran over without even putting my shoes on. Yuehua lay on the small couch, her little face flushed bright red, her lips chapped, and her breathing labored. I reached out and touched her forehead. It was alarmingly hot. "Quick! Go get the imperial physician!" As I shouted, I had a palace maid fetch some cold water to wipe her forehead and the palms of her hands. It's not easy to get a court physician to see me, after all. I'm just an obscure concubine. But luckily, I had some silver on me. So I slipped it to the little eunuch who was sent to fetch the imperial physician, and he ran off faster than a rabbit. After a long, restless night, Dr. Liu from the Imperial Medical Academy finally arrived. He took Yuehua's pulse and said that a cold had entered her body, compounded by emotional distress, which was why she had developed a high fever. He wrote out a prescription, gave a few more instructions, and then left. After seeing the imperial physician off, I turned to look at the little one sleeping soundly on the bed, and felt a mix of emotions I couldn't quite put into words. This little girl is only 7 years old. Her biological mother mistreats her for her own gain. Her biological father pays her no mind, and everyone in the palace avoids her like the plague. No matter how tough she acts, she must be suffering inside. I sighed, pulled up a chair, and sat down next to her to keep her company. She woke up just as dawn was breaking. As soon as she opened her eyes and saw me sitting next to her, she froze for a moment. What are you doing here? I've been waiting for your fever to go down." I felt her forehead. The fever had gone down a bit, but not completely. "Sweetheart, you really gave me a scare." Her eyes flickered, but she said nothing. I brought over the potion I had boiled, stirred it with a small spoon, blew on it to cool it down, and held it to her lips. She turned her head away, frowned, and said, "It's bitter. I won't drink it." "How can you get better without taking your medicine?" "So what if it's fixed? Nobody cares anyway." As I looked at her stubborn profile, I suddenly felt a little annoyed. "I care." She turned her head and stared at me blankly. "You had a high fever all night, and I stayed up all night watching over you. If anything happened to you, the Empress would hold me responsible, and I'd be in big trouble. So please, just drink this medicine, I'm begging you, okay? She was silent for a moment, then suddenly snorted derisively. The Empress? That old witch would love nothing more than to see me dead. I was so scared that I quickly covered her mouth with my hand. Are you crazy? You can't just say things like that. I had my hand over her mouth, and her eyes were wide with a hint of defiance. I let go of her hand and said in a low voice, "You can think whatever you want, but don't go blabbing about it. There are ears everywhere in the palace. If someone overhears you, even I won't be able to protect you." She glanced at me, said nothing more, and looked down to drink the medicine. After drinking it, she frowned and stuck out her tongue. It was really bitter. I reached into my sleeve, pulled out a piece of candy, unwrapped it, and popped it into her mouth. If you let it sit in your mouth, it won't taste bitter. With a piece of candy in her mouth, she stared at me blankly. In those big, dark eyes, it seemed as if something was beginning to shift. Since then, Yuehua's attitude toward me has improved just a tiny bit. Just a little bit. He went from being indifferent to occasionally replying, "But I'm already very content." I gradually realized that she's actually a very smart kid. It's not that she's immature. She just keeps herself so tightly wrapped up that she doesn't let anyone get close to her. The scar on her face is what she cares about most. Every time she changed her bandages, she wouldn't let me watch. She would hide behind the screen and finish the task without saying a word. Some palace maids were whispering about her scar behind her back, and she overheard them. She didn't cry or make a scene. She simply locked herself in her room and didn't come out all day. My heart aches so much, but I don't know how to comfort her. Later, I came up with a solution. I went to see the court painter, bought some pigments for painting floral designs, and spent the whole afternoon practicing in front of the mirror when I got back. That evening, I knocked on Yuehua's door. "What are you doing?" A surprise. She looked at me suspiciously, but let me in anyway. I had her sit in front of the bronze mirror, picked up a paintbrush, dipped it in paint, and began to carefully paint her face. The scar ran down her right cheek, stretching from her cheekbone all the way to the base of her ear. The jagged scar stood out starkly against her normally fair skin, making it particularly jarring to look at. Following the line of the scar, I drew a slanted plum blossom branch. Red petals bloomed along the lines of the scar, as if a flower had grown right out of the wound. "All right, take a look." Yuehua opened her eyes and looked at the bronze mirror. She froze. In the mirror, the girl's face no longer bore that hideous scar, but instead featured a vibrant flower branch. The scar is still there, but it has been painted to look like the grain of a tree trunk, dotted with red petals. Far from being unsightly, it actually has a special quality that's hard to put into words. "Do you like it?" I asked. She didn't say anything, but her eyes were red. I pretended not to notice and said with a smile, "From now on, I'll draw different patterns for you, a new one every day. I guarantee you'll look even more beautiful than all the beauties in the palace when you step outside." She kept her head down, and after a long while, she muttered, "Thank you." This was the first time she had ever said thank you to me. I almost couldn't hold back my tears. Since then, Yuehua has finally been willing to go out. I took her to Shoan Palace to pay her respects to Grand Consort Qi, and when the Grand Consort saw the floral makeup on her face, they all complimented her on how beautiful it looked. Although Yuehua is still not very talkative, at least she's not avoiding people anymore. Sometimes she would even strike up a conversation with me, asking me about things outside the palace and about my childhood. I told her about the time when I was a child and fell out of a tree, scaring my mother half to death. About the time I snuck out of the mansion to see the Lantern Festival, only to get lost and be brought back by a night patrol officer. And about the first time I tried my hand at needlework, when I poked holes in my embroidery hoop until it looked like a wasp nest. As she listened, the corners of her mouth would curve slightly. It wasn't very noticeable, but I saw it. I think it's actually pretty nice to just keep living like this, with food and drink, and a little girl to keep me company, even though she's a handful. She's slowly starting to warm up to me, but fate just wouldn't let me have a moment's peace. That day, I was at Shoan Palace playing mahjong with Grand Consort Chi. I had lost 2 liang of silver and was just about to try to win it back when a eunuch arrived to deliver an imperial edict. The Empress's imperial decree. I quickly knelt down to receive the imperial edict. The eunuch read aloud in a high-pitched voice. The gist of it was, Honorable Lady Xing was exceptionally virtuous and devoted, and she cared for the 6th princess with great dedication. Much to the Empress's delight, the 3rd prince had difficulty walking, the 5th princess had a congenital stutter, and the 7th prince was born with 6 fingers. Since the palace was so busy that no one could attend to them, the Empress specifically ordered Honorable Lady Xing to raise them all. When I heard that, I was completely stunned. What? The 3rd prince? The 5th princess? The 7th prince? I looked up at the eunuch's smiling face and asked with some difficulty, Your Excellency, are you saying that Her Majesty the Empress is going to send all the princes to me? Exactly, the eunuch said with a gentle smile. The Empress said that since noble Lady Xing has been able to take such good care of the 6th princess, having a few more children should be no problem at all. I opened my mouth but couldn't get the words out. I don't run a daycare center. After everyone left, I slumped in my chair, feeling like I wanted to cry but couldn't. Empress Dowager Qi sat nearby, cracking sunflower seeds, and said in a matter-of-fact tone, What am I saying? It's obvious that Her Majesty the Empress wants to dump all those troublesome children on you so she can focus on dealing with the other concubines. What can an old woman like me do to stop her? I'm at my wit's end. Before long, the 3 children were brought over. The 3rd prince, Murong Jean, sat in a wheelchair. He was 12 years old and had delicate, handsome features, though his complexion was pale and his eyes were as cold as ice. He was the son of the deposed Consort de. Back then, Consort de poisoned someone in a bid to win the emperor's favor. When the matter was exposed, she was banished to the cold palace, and the 3rd prince broke his leg during the upheaval, leaving him confined to a wheelchair ever since. From the moment he walked in until he sat down, he didn't say a word. The 5th princess, Murong Yao, was 9 years old. She was timid by nature and would shy away whenever she saw anyone. She was right there when her mother, the Empress Dowager, took her own life. She was terrified on the spot, and ever since then, she has stuttered. Whenever she gets flustered, she can't get a single word out. The 7th prince, Murong Yu, was 5 years old, a chubby little bundle of joy. He reached out to look, and noticed that his left hand now had an extra little finger. Just because of that extra little finger, the palace matrons labeled him an unlucky person, and even his mother, the Empress, took a dislike to him, abandoning him in a side hall to fend for himself. I looked at the 3 children, then glanced at Yuehua, who was standing next to me wearing a veil, and felt my head buzzing. 4 children. I haven't even gotten married yet, and I'm already a mother. What's more, every single one of them was a problem child who had been cast aside by the palace. Is it too late for me to back out now? As I sat in the courtyard of the side hall, looking at the 4 children in front of me, I felt for the first time that there was something seriously wrong with my life plan. Murong Jean sat in his wheelchair, holding a book in his hands, and didn't look up at me even once from start to finish. Murong Yao cowered in the corner, clutching a handkerchief so tightly that her knuckles had turned white with nervousness. Murong Yu, meanwhile, was crouched on the ground, drawing circles with a twig. Every now and then he'd look up at me, then quickly look back down. Only the 6th princess, Yuehua, was standing beside me, her arms crossed, looking at me with a look of disgust. What are you going to do? What should I do? You're supposed to support us. You're a high-ranking official. How much silver do you get in your monthly salary? Can you really afford to support 4 of us? I was stunned. I never even thought about that. I quickly ran the numbers in my head. A court official's monthly salary is 60 taels of silver, and the palace provides for his daily food, clothing, and living expenses. In theory, that should be enough. The problem is, though, that these 4 children are not ordinary children. The 3rd prince has difficulty walking and requires medication year-round. The 5th princess has a speech impediment and needs the imperial physician to perform acupuncture. Though the 7th prince is still young, something must be done about his extra little finger, and the ointment to remove the scar on Yuehua's face is outrageously expensive. On top of that, there's buying clothes for the children, managing the servants, and giving gifts during festivals and holidays. After I finished the calculation, my face went pale. Yuehua snorted coldly from the side. Have you figured it out? You're just a kid, how could you possibly understand any of this? After being in the cold palace for so long, how could I not understand? She rolled her eyes. You can't get anywhere without money, I know that better than you do. She left me speechless. Can I return the child? I can't do that either. The way those children looked at me was exactly the same as when Yuehua first arrived. Their eyes were filled with wariness, unease, and suspicion. If we send them back, their lives will only get harder. I sighed and went back to my room to open the small chest that had been part of my dowry. It contained the silver I'd brought from the Lin family, a total of 3,000 taels, which mother had given me to keep as a dowry. I took out 1,000 liang and had a palace attendant exchange it for small change to cover daily expenses. Then I took another 100 liang and went to the Imperial Medical Academy to get the best scar-removing medicine for Yuehua to use. Yuehua stared at the ointment she'd bought for 100 taels of silver, remained silent for a long time, and then said, "Are you crazy? What's wrong? Is my face worth 100 taels? It's worth it," I said. "You're the first child I've raised, so of course it's worth it." She turned her head away and didn't say anything, but I saw that the tips of her ears had turned red. The 3rd prince, Murong Jean, is a challenge. When I talk to him, he doesn't even bother to look up. I came to bring him his meal, but he didn't even look at it. He just said, "Put it over there." I asked him if there was anything he needed, but he didn't even look up. No, I've tried all kinds of methods, but none of them worked. Then one day, I happened to notice the book he was holding. It was *The Art of War* by Sun Tzu. I remarked offhand, war is a matter of deception. Therefore, one must appear incapable when capable, and appear inactive when active. He looked up and finally gave me a proper look. Have you read it? My father was a military officer, and he made me memorize it when I was a kid. He was silent for a moment, then said, "So do you know what the saying cast them into a place of no return, and they will survive, plunge them into a place of certain death, and they will live means?" I said, "I guess you have to be backed into a corner before your will to survive kicks in." He lowered his head and said nothing more, but I noticed that night, he ate all the food I had brought him. The situation with the 5th princess, Murong Yao, is even more complicated. She's too timid. She's afraid of everything. I'm afraid of loud voices, of people suddenly approaching me, of the sound of a knock on the door, and of shadows. It took me 3 whole days to get her to feel comfortable enough to speak to me. "Empress, Empress, Your Majesty." As she spoke, her little face turned bright red, and she had to repeat each word several times. I didn't rush her. I just crouched down in front of her and waited patiently. No, there's no rush. Sure, no rush. I'll wait for you." She struggled to finish her sentence, her forehead covered in sweat. I smiled and ruffled her hair. "You explained it very clearly, I understood everything." She finally looked up at me, and the corners of her mouth turned up slightly. That was the first time she smiled at me. The 7th prince, Murong Yu, was the least troublesome of them all. This kid is carefree, he was well behaved on his first day, but by the 2nd day he was already running all over the yard. He especially likes to follow me around. Wherever I go, he follows, just like a little tail. "Empress Xing, what kind of flower is this? Empress Xing, I want some candy. Empress Xing, look at the butterfly I caught." He had me in stitches, and it really cheered me up. It was just that extra little finger of his that was causing me some concern. I asked the court physician in private if there was any way to have it removed. The court physician said it was okay, But the child is too young and might not be able to handle it. It would be best to wait until the child is a little older. I had no choice but to make him a pair of gloves first and have him wear them, so the other kids wouldn't make fun of him. He didn't really mind. He said wearing gloves made him look impressive, like a great general. I smiled and pinched his cheek. All right. From now on, you're the grand general. And so life went on. Every morning when I wake up, the first thing I do is go see the third prince to ask if there's anything he needs. Then I go wake up the fifth princess. She's always a late riser, so it takes me a while to coax her out of bed. Next, I went to help the seventh prince get dressed. That little rascal doesn't sleep still, he's always kicking his blanket under the bed. Finally, I went to check on Yuehua's homework. Although she isn't very talkative, she studies very hard. Once the kids are all settled in, I'll pop over to see the ladies and spend some time chatting with them and tagging along for a meal. When I come back in the afternoon, I teach the children to read and write, or take them out to play in the yard. Since the third prince wouldn't come out, I pushed his wheelchair out onto the veranda so he could get some sun. Since the fifth princess was too shy to play, I pulled her over to play shuttlecock with me. Every time she kicked it once, I praised her 3 times. The seventh prince was running all over the courtyard. No one could stop him. Yuehua was sitting right next to us, reading a book while glancing over at us and smiling from time to time. Even though my days are hectic, I feel a sense of peace that's hard to put into words. But before long, I couldn't smile anymore, because money goes too fast. I originally thought that 3,000 taels would last a long time, but I ended up spending half of it in less than 3 months. The third prince's medicine costs 100 taels a month. Yuehua's scar-removing medicine is more expensive. On top of that, there are the children's food, clothing, and daily necessities, tips for the servants, and everyday social obligations. As I did the math, my hands were shaking. At this rate, not to mention 3,000 taels, even 30,000 taels wouldn't last very long. Yuehua is right, I'm way too poor for someone in my position. I thought about it for a moment, then secretly wrote a letter to my mother. The letter contained only 6 words. My dowry isn't enough to cover my expenses, so I'm asking for financial assistance. After I finished writing it, I felt a little embarrassed. But then again, don't those sisters who've married out come back to their parents' home to scrounge for money when life gets tough? They married into ordinary families. I married the son of heaven. After all, I have a prince and a princess. When I thought about it that way, I suddenly sat up straight. Give the letter to a trusted eunuch and have him find a way to get it out of the palace. But unexpectedly, before the money from mother arrived, a political upheaval occurred in the palace. That day, I was playing kuju with the seventh prince in the courtyard when I suddenly heard the sound of hurried footsteps in the distance. A large group of eunuchs and palace maids came running from the direction of Shoan Palace, all looking rather grim. I stopped a young eunuch I knew and asked, "What's going on?" The young eunuch whispered, "Does Lady Xing not know yet? The Empress has been deposed." What? It's absolutely true. Some say the Empress poisoned the concubines, killing several princes and princesses. The evidence is irrefutable, and His Majesty has already issued an edict to depose the Empress. I was stunned. Did the Empress poison her concubines? I remembered what Yuehua had said. That old witch would love nothing more than to see me dead. A chill ran down my spine. Shortly after, more news came in. The imperial consort also got into trouble. In her quest for the emperor's favor, she resorted to many despicable tactics and even caused the deaths of several of the other consort's children. The noble consort was even more outrageous. She was accused of having an affair with a guard. And it turned out that even her own child wasn't the emperor's. I was holding the seventh prince in my arms, huddled in Shoan Palace, shivering uncontrollably. What on earth is going on here? I'm just someone who wants to enjoy my retirement. How did I get sucked into this mess? The Grand Duchesses, however, remained calm, eating and drinking as usual. Grand Consort Qi, munching on sunflower seeds, said, "What's there to be afraid of? We're grand consorts, we're not in the same league as those concubines. It won't affect us." Just as I was about to breathe a sigh of relief, the eunuch bearing the imperial edict arrived. This time, it was Eunuch Li, who serves at His Majesty's side. Eunuch Li, beaming with a broad smile and holding the imperial edict in his hands, bowed to me the moment he walked through the door. Congratulations, Lady Xing. Best wishes, Lady Xing. I looked completely bewildered. What's this all about? Eunuch Li unfolded the imperial edict and read it aloud in a high-pitched voice. By the mandate of heaven, the emperor decrees, Lady Xing of the Lin clan is gentle, virtuous, and of pure and kind nature. She treats princes and princesses who are not her own as if they were her own children, caring for them with great devotion, and has thus won the emperor's deep affection. Now that the position of Empress is vacant, Lady Xing is hereby appointed Empress. So decreed. When I heard that, I was completely stunned. What? Me? The Empress? I opened my mouth and struggled to get 2 words out. What? Eunuch Li held out the imperial edict to me with both hands, his face beaming with a smile. Your Majesty the Empress, please accept the edict. My hands were shaking as I tremblingly accepted the imperial edict. Your Excellency, His Majesty. How could His Majesty? Eunuch Li lowered his voice and said, Your Majesty, His Majesty chose you as Empress precisely because of your gentle and virtuous nature. You treat the princes and princesses who are not your own as if they were your own children, a quality unmatched by anyone else in the entire palace. I see. What the emperor meant was, since you're the Empress, you must take good care of these children for me. Anyway, you wouldn't compete for favor or harm anyone. You're harmless, and you're useful. So, you are the most suitable queen. I stood there, holding the imperial edict, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. I never vied for the emperor's favor after entering the palace. I'd barely even seen him a few times, yet I ended up becoming Empress. After Eunuch Li left, Yuehua saw the imperial edict in my hand and paused for a moment. She was silent for a moment, then suddenly smiled. It wasn't a sarcastic laugh, it was a genuine one. That's great. What's so good about it? If you become Empress, no one will dare to bully us anymore. As I looked at her smiling face, a feeling I couldn't quite put into words suddenly welled up inside me. Maybe all of this is just fate. I had originally thought that I had entered the palace to find some peace and quiet. But in the end, nothing was left out. The news of my becoming queen was like a pebble tossed into a pond, sending out ripples one after another. The harem was the first to erupt. It is said that when Consort Shun heard the news, she spit out a mouthful of tea, splashing the head lady-in-waiting standing before her all over the face. The consort shut herself in her bedchamber and smashed 3 sets of tea sets. And Dang's reaction was even more dramatic. She rolled her eyes and fainted. They probably thought that I, a noble woman of ordinary looks, average talent, and no presence whatsoever, had somehow become the mistress of the harem. That's the height of absurdity. Never mind them, even I feel like I'm dreaming. Early the next morning, as was customary, I, as the new Empress, went to pay my respects to the Empress Dowager. I put on the Queen's ceremonial robes. They were so heavy that walking felt like carrying a mountain on my back. Yuehua stood at the doorway, watching me walk out of the room. She looked me up and down and, in a rare moment of praise, said, Not bad, you really cut a fine figure. Are you complimenting me? I guess so. I took a deep breath and, with my 4 children in tow, set off in a grand procession toward the Empress Dowager's palace. The Empress Dowager lived in Sinaying Palace. With her head full of white hair, she sat on the phoenix throne, her expression giving no hint of whether she was happy or unhappy. I knelt properly and bowed. This humble servant offers her respects to the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager said nothing. She looked at me for a long time before finally saying slowly, Stand up. I stood up and stood respectfully at the foot of the table. The Empress Dowager looked at me for a moment longer, then suddenly sighed. At first, I wasn't entirely in favor of His Majesty choosing you to be Empress. My heart skipped a beat, but when I thought about it later, there really wasn't anyone in the harem more suitable than you. I kept my head down and didn't dare say a word. You don't vie for the emperor's favor, and you treat those children with genuine kindness. That kind of character is rare in the imperial harem. From now on, the harem is in your hands. Just make sure to keep the girls in line and prevent them from causing any more trouble. I quickly knelt down. I, your humble servant, will do my utmost not to betray the trust placed in me by the Empress Dowager and His Majesty. When I came out of the Empress Dowager's palace, my back was drenched in sweat. Yuehua whispered from the side, "What are you so nervous about?" How could I not be nervous? That's the Empress Dowager. After all, she's just an old lady. What's there to be afraid of? I glanced at her and thought to myself, of course you're not afraid. You were even bold enough to call her an old witch right to the Empress Dowager's face back then. But I didn't dare say that out loud. After becoming Empress, my life underwent a complete transformation. First, let's talk about where to stay. I moved from the side hall next to Shoan Palace to the main hall of Funi Palace. The palace was more than 3 times as large. The main hall alone could accommodate 20 banquet tables. The first time I walked in, I almost got lost. Next is the monthly stipend. A nobleman's monthly stipend is 60 taels, while the Empress's is 1,000 taels. When I received my first month's salary, I almost cried. Finally, I don't have to scrimp and save anymore. You'll never have to cringe at the thought of those ointment prices again. I immediately bought 2 new sets of clothes for each of the children, got the 3rd prince a better wheelchair, arranged for the best acupuncturist to treat the 5th princess, and bought the 7th prince a whole pile of toys, big and small. Yuehua's scar treatment has also been upgraded to the best available. She looked at the tube of ointment, remained silent for a long time, and then said, "This scar of mine will never heal. Even if it doesn't work, we have to try it." I said, "What if it does work?" She didn't say anything, but I could see her eyes were slightly red. Next comes the spectacle. When the Empress traveled, she was accompanied by a ceremonial guard, with palace maids and eunuchs leading the way, and ceremonial regalia such as fans, golden gourds, and battle axes. The first time I went out, I saw a huge crowd following behind me and was so scared I almost turned back. Yuehua teased me from the side. "What are you afraid of? You're the most powerful one in the harem now. I'm just not used to it." "Then just take your time getting used to it." As she spoke, she reached out and smoothed my collar. That movement was natural and practiced, as if she had done it countless times before. It warmed my heart. The news quickly spread outside the palace. In her letter, Mother wrote 3 full pages, all filled with words of pride. "Do you know what your aunt said the last time she visited?" She said, "Oh my, I always said Tanger was a lucky child. And I was right. That half-sister of yours, she was originally planning to make a move on Zhao Jinghen. But as soon as she heard you'd become Empress, she was so scared she didn't even dare step outside. And as for the Marquis of Jinbei's household, it's now the laughingstock of the entire capital. Now that you're Empress, Qi, the eldest son of the Marquis, isn't even worthy of tying your shoes." I read the letter and laughed so hard I was doubled over. Yuehua asked me from beside me why I was smiling, so I showed her the letter. After reading it, she snorted coldly. "What's so funny about that? If you'd married a guy like that back then, you wouldn't even have time to cry now. That's why I didn't get married." "Well, you're pretty lucky, then." "Of course." She rolled her eyes and walked away, but I noticed the corners of her mouth were turned up. Not long after becoming Empress, I discovered something interesting. Emperor Murong Yuan was actually quite a peculiar man. Logically speaking, since he made me Empress, shouldn't he at least come see me? But he didn't. A month has gone by, and he hasn't come. 2 months have passed, and he still hasn't come. I'm not sad at all, I'm actually kind of happy. If he doesn't come, I won't have to wait on him. How much more carefree that would be. But the people in the harem didn't see it that way. They believed that if the Empress was not in favor, she had fallen out of favor. Falling out of favor meant losing power, and losing power meant she deserved to be bullied. So, some people started testing the waters with me. First, Consort Shun, under the pretext of paying her respects. dropped a subtle hint. Your Majesty the Empress. His Majesty has been very busy with official duties lately. If you have a moment, you really ought to go to the Imperial study and bring His Majesty a bowl of soup. I smiled and said, Your Majesty has so many matters to attend to. I wouldn't want to disturb you. Consort Shan said a few more words, but when she saw that I wasn't responding, she had no choice but to leave, looking rather sheepish. Next was the consort Shu, who was even more direct. She invited me to join her in viewing the flowers at the Imperial Garden, and halfway there, wherein into the Emperor. The Emperor was discussing matters with several ministers in the pavilion. When he saw us, he merely nodded and then continued talking with his ministers. The Imperial consort stood nearby, gazing longingly at the Emperor, as if she wanted to stick her eyes right onto him. I stood there, idly counting how many peonies there were in the garden. After a while, the Emperor finished speaking and walked over. The consort Shu immediately stepped forward and said in a sweet, coquettish voice, Your Majesty, I've just learned how to make a new soup. Would you like to try some? The Emperor glanced at her and said indifferently, Just have the Imperial kitchen prepare it. There's no need for you to do it yourself. The consort Shu's expression froze. The Emperor looked at me again, sizing me up from head to toe. Empress, what are you doing here? I quickly curtsied. Your Majesty. I was admiring the flowers with consort He. He looked at me, then at the consort Shu. You two sure have a lot of free time. I thought to myself, I have plenty of free time every day, as long as you don't come over. But she said, Your Majesty is busy with state affairs. I dare not disturb you. I will handle matters in the harem myself. Please rest assured, Your Majesty. He looked at me and said, You're quite sensible. After saying that, he left. The consort stood there, her face turning green with rage. I pretended not to notice and went back to looking at my peonies. Back at Fini Palace, Yue Hua asked me, I heard you met His Majesty? I saw him. What did he say to you? They say I'm mature. Yue Hua was silent for a moment, then said, Do you know what that means? What does that mean? That means he doesn't hate you yet. So what? She fell silent again, then said something I didn't understand. It's not bad, it's a good start. Without giving it much thought, I took the 7th prince out to play. There's one thing that has made me the happiest since becoming Empress. That means I can finally stand up for the kids without hesitation. Back then, I was just a noble woman. Whenever I heard people gossiping behind the 3rd prince's back about him being lame, I didn't dare to speak up against it. I could only pretend I hadn't heard them. But things are different now. I am the queen. Anyone who dares to bully my child will get what's coming to them. That day, as I was taking a walk in the Imperial Garden, I overheard a few palace maids gossiping in a corner. Have you heard? That lame 3rd prince is changing his medicine again. What a waste of money. A cripple is a cripple. No matter what medicine he takes, he'll never get better. That's right. The 5th princess stutters. Too, she acts just like a fool. And then there's the 6th princess, her face is ruined. Forget about getting married. She'll barely be able to show her face in public from now on. I was furious when I heard that. I walked over and stared at them coldly. When several palace maids saw me, they turned pale with fright and fell to their knees all at once. Empress. I looked at them and said with a smile, What did you just say? I didn't catch that. Could you repeat it? No one dared to speak. They're my children. If I hear a single more word of gossip, whoever said it had better pack their things and report to the Imperial Harem Bureau, and they'll never be allowed out again. Several palace maids trembled with fear and repeatedly knelt, begging for mercy. I ignored them and walked away. When I returned to Fini Palace, I noticed that the door to the 3rd prince's room was ajar, with a beam of light shining through. I walked over and saw the 3rd prince sitting in a wheelchair, holding a book in his hands. But he wasn't reading the book. He was looking at me. What's wrong? He was silent for a moment, then said, I heard what you said earlier in the Imperial Garden. I was taken aback for a moment. Don't take it personally. I just can't stand seeing people pick on you guys." He lowered his head and remained silent for a long time. Then he said something I didn't catch. "What did you say?" He looked up and raised his voice slightly. "Thank you." At that moment, my eyes stung a little. I smiled and waved my hand. "Don't thank me, I'm your mom. So of course I'm going to protect you." He opened his mouth as if to say something, but in the end, he didn't say a word. But I noticed that his finger, as he turned the page, trembled ever so slightly. The fifth princess ran over from the other end of the hallway, wrapped her arms around my waist, and looked up at me. Mother, Your Majesty." "Huh? Like, you." She still spoke very slowly and with great effort, but I heard that sentence very clearly. I crouched down, hugged her, and reached out to pull the seventh prince, who was standing nearby, into my arms as well. "I like you guys, too." Yuehua stood at the doorway, watching the scene unfold, her arms crossed, a look on her face that said, "You two are so sappy." But I noticed her eyes were red. That night, for the first time, I felt that perhaps I hadn't entered the palace just to spend my twilight years there. Maybe God brought me here just so I could meet them. I've been living in Fini Palace for nearly half a year, and the Emperor hasn't visited even once. I don't care at all. In fact, I think it's actually pretty good. But the people in the palace didn't see it that way. They felt that if the Empress lacked the Emperor's favor, she had no foundation to stand on and would sooner or later be brought down. Consort Shun has recently been making frequent trips to the imperial study, one day bringing soup, the next day bringing pastries, as if she wanted to be glued to the Emperor's side. The consort Shu wasn't about to be outdone. She would chance upon the Emperor in the imperial garden every day, wearing aqua blue one day and pale yellow the next, looking even more vibrant than a peacock spreading its tail feathers. I didn't react at all. Every day, eat when you should, sleep when you should, and spend time with your kids when you should. The Empress Dowager Qi once asked me, "Aren't you even a little worried? Why should I be in a hurry? What if someone takes your spot?" That works out perfectly. Once I retire, I'll come back to Shoan Palace to play mahjong with you. The Empress Dowager Qi was so furious she hit me on the head with her fan. "What's wrong with you? You don't want to be Empress. Do you want to end up in a coffin instead? It's so great to be a layabout, no worries. No need to get up early, and I can sleep in every day until I wake up naturally." Princess Consort Qi rolled her eyes and ignored me. But I'm not worried, someone else is worried for me. One night, Yuehua came and knocked on my door, looking as serious as an adult. "Come on in," I said, motioning for her to sit down. "What's wrong?" "Did you know that Consort Shun went to the imperial study again today?" "I know. She brought His Majesty a bowl of ginseng soup." "Oh, aren't you afraid His Majesty might be seduced by her?" I couldn't help but laugh. "You're just a kid, why are you worrying about something like that?" Yuehua grew impatient. "I'm not a child anymore. I'm just worried about you. Do you have any idea what people in the palace are saying about you behind your back?" "What do you mean?" "They say you're the Queen of Ornaments." I paused for a moment, then burst out laughing. "Queen of Decor? That's actually a pretty nice title." Yuehua stamped her foot in frustration. Why don't you care at all?" I stopped smiling and looked at her intently. "Yuehua, I have a question for you." "What?" "If I were to compete for your favor, do you think I could beat those people?" Yuehua froze. I continued, "I'm not as beautiful as they are. My talents aren't as remarkable as theirs. I can't sing or dance, and I'm even clumsy with my words. Why does your Majesty favor me?" But you're the Empress. The title of Empress is merely a formality. His Majesty made me Empress because I pose no threat, not because he favors me. If I were to vie for his favor, I would lose that harmlessness. Not only would I fail to win his favor, but I would also lose the life I have now. Yuehua fell silent. "So, I won't fight for it. I just need to guide you all well, manage the harem properly, and make sure His Majesty can't find fault with me, then I'll be able to peacefully assume the title of Empress Dowager." "Well, don't you feel wronged?" "Why feel wronged? I don't even like him. Yuehua opened her mouth but said nothing. I smiled and ruffled her hair. All right, go to bed now. You have school tomorrow. She walked away, reached the door, and turned back to look at me one last time. You're the smartest person I've ever met. Why? Because you know what you want, and you know what you don't want. I was taken aback for a moment, but before I could say anything, she had already run off. The next day, I went to Shoan Palace as usual to pay my respects to Grand Consort Qi. Halfway there, I suddenly saw a large crowd ahead of me moving toward me. The bright yellow imperial robe was particularly dazzling in the sunlight. He is the emperor. I quickly stepped aside to the side of the road, ready to wait until he had passed before continuing on my way. But to my surprise, he stopped right in front of me. Empress. I quickly curtsied. This humble servant offers her respects to your majesty. Get up, he said, glancing at me. What have you been up to lately? Your majesty. Every day I spend time chatting with the grand princesses and looking after the princes and princesses. There's nothing much to report. He nodded and suddenly said, I've heard that the sixth princess's complexion has improved considerably. I was taken aback for a moment. I hadn't expected him to care about that. Your majesty. After taking the medicine, I'm feeling a little better, but the wound is too deep, so it's healing more slowly. You sure are dedicated. They are my children. It's only right. He looked at me, his eyes holding a hint of something I couldn't quite understand. I hear you're still tutoring the third prince? The third prince is eager to learn on his own. I merely keep him company from time to time. Is he willing to talk to you? He paused for a moment. That boy hasn't spoken to anyone since what happened to Consort De. Even when I went to ask him, he wouldn't say a single word. I didn't expect it to turn out this way. He spoke to me, not much. But he did say something. The emperor looked at me, and his expression suddenly took on a complex look. You sure have a way with things. I just treated him like any other child. I didn't do anything special. He was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, I shall dine at your residence tonight. After saying that, he left. I stood there, frozen in place, for quite a while. What? Is the emperor coming to Funi Palace? I hurried back and had the palace maids prepare the evening meal. Seeing how flustered I was, Yuehua asked, What's wrong? His Majesty is coming to dine. Yuehua paused for a moment, then gave a meaningful smile. Oh, is the Empress finally going to fall in favor? What favor? He's just here for a meal. Why did we have to come here to eat? Why not go to Consort Shun's place? Why not go to Consort Shu's place? Her question stumped me. Yeah, with so many concubines in the harem, why did he choose me of all people? At dinner time, the emperor actually showed up. He changed into his everyday clothes, which made him look less imposing, but he still had a serious, unsmiling expression. I had the imperial kitchen prepare 8 dishes, 4 meat dishes and 4 vegetable dishes, all of which were home-style dishes. He sat down, glanced at the food on the table, and then looked at me. Is this what you usually eat? Your Majesty, this is already quite a feast. He picked up a bite with his chopsticks, tasted it, and said nothing. I sat there, so nervous that my palms were sweating. He took a few bites, then suddenly said, You should have some, too. Huh? Sit down and let's eat together. I had no choice but to sit down, pick up my chopsticks, and eat in small bites. The atmosphere was a little awkward. I racked my brain trying to come up with something to talk about, but I didn't know what to say. Just then, the 7th prince, Murong Yu, ran in from outside. Mom, look at the cricket I caught. He was holding up a small wicker cage, and sure enough, there was a shiny black cricket inside. When he saw the emperor, he paused for a moment, then quickly knelt down. Your humble son pays his respects to his Majesty. The emperor looked at him, a look of surprise on his face. What did you call the Empress? Mother. When did you start calling her mother Empress? The 7th prince tilted his head and thought for a moment. We'll call her that once we get here. Mother said she'll be our queen from now on. The emperor turned to look at me. I quickly explained, Your Majesty, I believe that since I am raising the princes and princesses, they should have proper titles. So, you did the right thing. He interrupted me calmly. You did a great job. He looked at the seventh prince again, his gaze resting on the prince's gloved hand. Does your hand still hurt? The seventh prince shook his head. It doesn't hurt anymore. Mother said that once I'm a little older, they'll cut off my extra little finger, and then I'll be just like everyone else. The emperor was silent for a moment, then reached out and patted him on the head. Your mother did a great job. The seventh prince grinned happily and ran off again, holding up his cricket. The emperor watched him walk away, then suddenly said something that took me by surprise. Thank you. I was stunned. You've done a great job teaching these kids. Your servant merely did what was required. In this palace, many people aren't even willing to do what they're supposed to do. He set down his chopsticks and looked at me. I made you Empress back then because I thought you were the right choice. Looking back today, I see I made the right decision. I looked at him, not knowing what to say. He stood up, walked to the door, and glanced back at me. I'll be back tomorrow. Then he left. I stood there, unable to snap out of it for quite a while. Yuehua peeked out from behind the screen, a smug smile on her face. What did I say? If you don't hate it, that's a good start. Don't give me that. She ran off, smiling, leaving behind a trail of tinkling laughter. That night, I lay in bed, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. What does the emperor is coming again tomorrow mean? I'm so ordinary, there's no way he could like me, right? But if he didn't like her, why did he come? I rolled over and pulled the blanket over my head. Never mind. I won't think about it anymore. Come on. Then, it's not like I'm losing anything. It's just a group dinner. The emperor said he was coming, and he really did come. He came again for dinner the next day. On the third day, he still showed up. On the fourth day, not only did he come himself, but he also brought a stack of memorials and began reviewing them here. I sat beside him, watching him review the memorials, and thought to myself, when did my Fini palace turn into the imperial study? But I couldn't very well send him away, so I just had someone bring him tea and water and stay by his side. Yuehua hid behind the door and watched for a while, then ran over and whispered to me, Consort Shun is peeking in from outside. She's turned green with envy. Don't worry about her. So, can I go and give her a hard time? Don't get me into trouble. Yuehua pouted slightly, but she stayed put anyway. Consort Shun was indeed very angry. For 5 days in a row, the emperor had come to Fini Palace, something she found simply unbelievable. Refusing to accept defeat, on the 6th day she personally simmered a bowl of bird's nest soup, brought it to Fini Palace, and said she had come to pay her respects to His Majesty. The emperor was reviewing memorials and didn't even look up. Just put it there. Consort Shun was unwilling to give up. Your Majesty, I stewed this myself. Would you like to try some? I said, put it there. His tone was starting to sound a little impatient. Consort Shun's face turned pale. She set down the bird's nest and sheepishly backed out of the room. I stood there pretending not to notice anything, looking down and sipping my tea. After she left, the emperor looked up and glanced at me. Why aren't you talking to her? I don't know her very well. You're the Empress. And she's a concubine, how could you not know her? The harem is so vast. There are only a few people I know. He looked at me, a hint of amusement in his eyes. So who are you close with? Princess Consort Chi, along with several other princess consorts. He paused for a moment, then couldn't help but laugh. That was the first time he smiled in front of me. When he smiled, he looked like a completely different person from his usual self, with his eyebrows and eyes relaxing. I was momentarily stunned. He stopped smiling and asked me, "What are you looking at?" "It's nothing," I said, quickly lowering my head. "Your Majesty, it's time for your meal." And so, the emperor began to visit Fini Palace more and more frequently. He went from coming every other day to coming every day. And sometimes he even had lunch here. The way the women in the harem looked at me changed from contempt to jealousy. And from jealousy to apprehension. The consort Shu said behind my back that I was putting on airs and claimed I must have used some kind of seductive trick. Consort Shun went even further, accusing me of playing the fool to catch the tiger, pretending to be mediocre on purpose to win sympathy. When I heard that, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why would I act like that? I'm really just average. But no one believed me. They were convinced that I was a hidden master, a dark horse in the world of palace intrigue. One day, the emperor suddenly asked me, "Do you want to leave the palace?" I paused for a moment. Leave the palace? Go back to the Lin family's place. Haven't you gone a long time without seeing your mother? I was stunned. After being in the palace for so long, I never thought I'd be able to leave. Is your majesty serious? When have I ever lied to you? I was so excited I almost jumped for joy. But remembering that I was the empress and had to maintain my dignity, I forced myself to hold back. I think so, your majesty. Go ahead. Then, he paused for a moment, then added, "I'll go with you." Huh? I am out on an incognito visit to see for myself what the Lin family's family values are like. I stared at him with wide eyes. The emperor is coming with me to my parents' house. If word of this got out, wouldn't mom be over the moon? On the day we returned to the Lin family home, it wasn't a particularly grand affair. The emperor was dressed in a plain brocade robe, disguised as a wealthy young gentleman. I brought only Yue Hua and 2 palace maids. My mother came to greet me at the door, and as soon as she saw me, tears began to fall. Tanger. No, your majesty the empress. Mom, please don't cry. I'm just fine, aren't I? Wiping away her tears, the mother saw the emperor behind her again and stood there in a daze for a long time. This is... That's his majesty, I whispered. Her mother's eyes widened. She was so scared her legs went weak, and she almost fell to her knees. The emperor quickly supported her and said with a smile, "Mother-in-law, there's no need to be so formal. Today, I'm just an ordinary son-in-law." Once we got to the backyard and were alone together, Mother couldn't stop smiling. She held my hand and kept praising me. "Tanger, you've really brought honor to our family. Do you know what the situation is like at the Marquis of Jinbei's mansion right now? Zhao Jingheng married your half-sister as his primary wife, but that girl Wanfu turned out to be incredibly spoiled and threw the Marquis's mansion into complete chaos. Zhao Jingheng regrets it so much he could kick himself. He tells everyone he was blind to her true nature back then." I couldn't help but laugh. "And then there's your half-sister. She's always coming back to her parents' house to complain, saying she has a hard life and married the wrong man. Your father was so furious. He almost kicked her out. So what about her now? What else can be done? It's not that easy to get into the Ho family's mansion. Once you're in, you can't get out. If she just kept a low profile, it wouldn't have been such a big deal. But she had to go and cause trouble. She caused the concubine's child to miscarry. Now Zhao Jingheng is making a scene, demanding a divorce." I sighed, not knowing what to say. Back then, when Zhao Jingheng asked Wanfu to become his concubine, it was because he was drawn to her beauty and talent. But beauty and talent, after all, can't put food on the table. If you have a bad character, it doesn't matter how good-looking you are, it's all for nothing. On the day we returned to the palace, the emperor suddenly asked me from the carriage, "Do you know everything about the Zhao family?" "I know a little. Do you want to get back at them?" I paused for a moment. "Revenge? If you wish, I can avenge you." I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. "No, thank you. I'm doing just fine now, and whether they're doing well or not has nothing to do with me." The emperor looked at me, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "Don't you hate them?" It would be a lie to say I don't hate them, but now that I have a son and a daughter, a good reputation and a respectable position, and enough to eat and wear, hating them would just be a waste of energy. He was silent for a moment, then suddenly reached out and gently took my hand. "You're a good one." My heart skipped a beat. "Your Majesty." Over the years, I have met so many women. They either fear me, beg me, or try to take advantage of me. You are the only one who wants nothing from me. It's not that I don't want it, it's that I don't dare to ask for it. So what about you now? I looked up at him. His eyes were bright, and my reflection was visible in them. It suddenly occurred to me that perhaps I didn't enter the palace just to spend my twilight years there. Perhaps I entered the palace to meet him. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, 3 years have passed. Although the third prince still cannot walk, he is now able to stand with the aid of a cane. He no longer shut himself away in his room. Occasionally, he would go out into the yard to sit, read a book, and soak up some sun. The fifth princess is speaking more and more fluently. Although she's still a bit slow, she can now communicate normally with others. She's taken a liking to drawing and is actually quite good at it. Even the Empress Dowager has praised her for her talent. The seventh prince had his extra little finger amputated. He wore a bandage for a while, and it has now fully healed. He was still just as mischievous, running around the palace every day. The emperor said he was just like a monkey. As for Yue Hua, her scars had faded considerably. Although traces were still visible, she no longer cared. She said, "No one dares to mock me anymore anyway. Who would dare to mock the Empress's daughter?" I smiled and said, "You're my daughter, after all." She shot me a look, but the corners of her mouth were turned way up. One day, the emperor suddenly said to me, "I wish to name a crown prince. Your Majesty is wise. Aren't you curious to know whom I will choose?" No matter who is chosen, he is still His Majesty's son. He looked at me and said, "I wish to name Jenner as my heir. He is my eldest son. Although he is currently unable to walk, the imperial physician says he will recover in time. Moreover, he is well educated, has a steady disposition, and is capable of shouldering great responsibilities. I have no objections. What about you? Do you want to have children of your own?" I was taken aback for a moment. Over the years, I've never given this any thought. With these 4, I have more than enough. He took my hand and whispered, "I want to have a child with you." My face flushed all of a sudden. "Your Majesty, I mean it," he said, looking at me. A few years ago, I had many reservations, but now, I've made up my mind. I like you. It's not because you're good at raising kids, and it's not because you don't fight for what you want, it's simply because you are who you are. I opened my mouth but couldn't get the words out. He leaned in and gave me a gentle kiss on the forehead. "From now on, let's live a good life." My eyes welled up, and I nodded. Hum.